What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So good to see all your smiling faces. Today is a very exciting day. Today we are finally putting on our 2-inch lift kit from Anderson's Design. Let's check it out. Now, this isn't the box that everything came in because I've already opened it and went through and kind of double checked to make sure everything was there. So now, let's go ahead and go through these and get them all laid out and see what we're working with. I do gotta say, this stuff was packaged very well. Saran wrap, wrapped in foam, packaged really tightly. It was all packaged perfectly. And they got it out super quick. It said a 2 to 3 week lead time. And I think it showed up to the house in like a week and a half or 2 weeks. Made and shipped. So Anderson Design killed it. So what we have here, we went with a 2 3/8 lift in the rear to account for rear end sag that the Subarus are known to have. So these are our 2 3/8 rear spacers, and then these are going to be our 2-inch front strut spacer, our multi-link spacers, and then another multi-link spacer, I'm assuming for the front, and these are going to be the 4 for the rear. Nice little CNC design, left and right, so they're marked. So that's also a nice touch. Everything's coated. Hardware is clearly marked and bagged. So we have our brake line spacers, top strut mount hardware, MLK hardware. Also, when you order, Anderson Design sends you an email with detailed instructions. So that's super helpful. This is every tool you're going to need for this job that I used anyways. Quarter mallet, torque wrench that goes to at least 120 foot-pounds, breaker bar, pry bar, 1/2 inch and a 3/8 drive, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 19, and a 22, random extensions and wobbles and steps. I had to use 2 different Allen keys, a 3/16 and a 5/32 to do the front tie rods, long extension, panel popper, magnet in case you lose a nut, impact, 22, 219s, 217s, 16, 214s, 13, and a 12. That was everything I used to do this job. Also, before we get started, we measured the rear just from 3 days of driving it. Went from gaining 1 3/4 inches to maintaining 1 1/4 inches just from the spacers, or not the spacers, just from the struts and the new springs. So 2 inches of lift plus 1 1/4 inches out of our new springs. We should be ending at like 3.5 inches just in suspension modification alone of lift on the Subaru. So that's amazing. Okay, so I stand corrected. After reading the directions a little bit, Only these, anyways, these and the hard top nuts are for the front. Everything else is going to be for the rear, even the brake line extensions, all of it is for the back of the car. So these are going to be the only things we have to install up front. So let's pull our struts out again. So we got this one built and put on. It will reuse your old Strut Hardware, which is a size 12. They provide new upper strut hardware, which is going to be a size 13. But it doesn't matter the orientation of you put this on your top hat. The only thing that matters is the direction that you bolt it into the car, which I'll show you that when we put it back in. Is take out your camber adjustment bolt, which is a 19, and the bottom bolt, which is also a 19. Take off your speed line, sensor line, which is a 12. Undo your brake line, which is a 12, and that'll allow this to drop. You'll also have to take out your sway bar bushing in links. That'll allow the lower control arm to sag out enough to be able to put this back in. So let's go ahead and throw this in, and then I can show you the right way to align this top hat in the car. So there we are. Now we can just rehook that brake line back up right there. That one will go right there. And then we can realign our strut bar, which might be some of our problem. So we can get that hooked back in, and then there. That's how that's supposed to go. So you want to read it from the front this way, H in the rear, the side logo up front for left or right. So you'll read them from the front of the car, passengers left, driver is right. And you want to be able to read the logo this way. So everything I've just said about the front top hat spacers, completely wrong. Left goes on the driver's side, right goes on the passenger side. I don't know how I read the directions wrong, but I'm glad I reread them because we put the top hats on the wrong top hats. So we have to flip flop these and redo the whole front end again. Okay, now with the fronts figured out and put in the correct way, let's move on to the rear. And to start, we're going to take off this brake line clip right here, and then we're going to unclip our speed sensors. From those clips right there. Okay, so we have the brake line disconnected, speed line fully disconnected from the upper A-arm, so now we can move on. So once you get all this stuff removed out of the back, you can get to the top of the strut bolts that are 14s right here on either side. Alright, here we are, working late into the night. So what you're going to do first is undo your lower control arm down here, so you can undo your strut from the top, so you can pull your strut back out. So once you have the struts off of both sides, we are now going to prop the diff with a floor jack, and then go through and undo our 4 subframe mounts. So there's one here, there's one here. Those are going to be both 19s. And then you're going to have this lower bracing arm. That's gonna sit about like that. And those are gonna be two 14s right there. That's gonna come out. Do it on both sides. Use the floor jack to lower the diff down and the subframe. So now we're gonna pull out these subframe bushings from the factory. One off at each side. We're just gonna throw those away because the new lift accounts for those factory spacers. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our new top hat spacer onto our strut, get our struts back in the car, bolted back up with the provided hardware, and then we are going to work on doing our multi-link spacers. So let's get the struts back in. Okay, so I just had to call it quits last night. Got super frustrated, couldn't get anything to go back in the way it was supposed to. Getting the rear subframe realigned after having all the bolts out was really, I don't even have words for it. It was a huge pain. But I finally got it last night. I just had to shut the camera off and got them all four loosely in there. But now we have to go back through and torque each one of them down. And I forgot some hardware last night that should have been added to it. So let me show you what's going on. So these top upper bolts that go from the top of this into your car is going to be a 22 millimeter, and we want these to be torqued down to 100 to 120 foot-pounds on the top and 106 going through here to the bottom. So the top ones I put to 110, and to do that you take your socket, set it in there, run an extension through the subframe bushing, up and in, and then you can get it onto the nut that way. And then just run your torque out here. So you gotta do 110 on the tops, and then 106 on the bottom, and then your other arm here, which will be this one right here, will be 30 foot-pounds. And then this is the piece that I forgot last night. So you want to put your stock washer back on. I have it upside down. There you go. Had it on upside down. So you want to go on like that, in through the bottom, and right up in there. And then you're going to do a washer, lock washer, and then the nut. And then you're going to torque this section down to 106 foot-pounds. Okay, so once we have this and this top section torqued down, next we got to add our lower arm right here. So that's going to sit just like that. Then we can rerun our bolt in through there and then add the block on that side. So let's add our bolt back right here. Okay, now that we have our arm just loosely in place, we can take our last block and our last little bag of partial hardware, and this is going to sit right up like that. So bolt with washer and then lock washer through there and then up to there. So let's get those loosely put in. Okay, so now that we have these loosely put in, we're going to torque these ones down to 30 foot-pounds. And again, this bottom subframe gets torqued down to 106 So let's do that, and then we can move on to our final step. Once you get your strut back in onto your lower control arm, all bolted back up, however you see fit. I had to do this one multiple different ways just to get it to go back in. The final piece of the puzzle is to snap your wheel speed sensors back in to the proper spot, and then put your brake line spacer in. So they'll provide you with a 14, that's a 12, and that sits just like that. The elbow points into the car. So now that we have everything in and installed, all that's left is to put our stuff back into the rear, all of our panels and things like that, lift it up and put the wheels on. This is what it looks like when it's all said and done.